Welcome back to YouTube channel, where stories of small coins turn into grand tales of mystery, fortune, and forgotten history. Today, you're going to hear a story that defies logic, challenges what we think we know about modern currency, and pulls back the curtain on a quiet storm that brewed for years before the truth finally emerged. This story begins not in a grand auction house or a prestigious minting museum, but in the most unremarkable place you could imagine, a landfill in rural New Mexico. It was the summer of 2021. A man named Vincent Morales, who worked part-time as a recycling operator and full-time as a wanderer of junkyards, happened to stumble across a small copper glint amid a mountain of discarded electronics and soda cans. Vincent wasn't a coin collector. He didn't know a Buffalo nickel from a Susan B. Anthony dollar. But he had an eye for the unusual, not because he studied it, but because he lived his life surrounded by the discarded and forgotten. The unusual stood out like a beacon. This particular penny, minted in 2011 and stamped with the Denver mark, caught his attention not because of what it looked like, but because of what it didn't. The color was inconsistent. It had an almost iridescent sheen, like a penny left in acid, yet its shape and edges were unnaturally perfect. More so, the reverse side didn't seem to match the front. The design was familiar, yes, it had the shield and the Union motif, but there was something slightly wrong about the scale, a distortion that seemed intentional rather than accidental. Vincent dropped it in his pocket without a second thought. But 2 days later, his curiosity got the better of him, and he took the coin to a local pawn shop, one of those places cluttered with dusty instruments and war medals. The owner, a man named Curtis Lang, was a retired metallurgist from the Air Force. When Vincent handed him the coin, Curtis went still. Then he asked to keep it for further analysis. What Curtis found was beyond explanation. He used a handheld XRF analyzer, just a simple metals tester, but the readout made no sense. The coin wasn't made of copper and zinc. It wasn't even a traditional alloy. The reading suggested a layered compound that didn't belong in any minting process, modern or otherwise. It contained traces of niobium, tantalum, and scandium, elements not found in any circulated American coinage now. Curtis was the kind of man who didn't jump to conclusions. He believed in science and evidence, but he also believed in patterns. So he did some digging. What he found was that, back in 2011, there was a proposal buried deep within the U.S. Mint's planning division to test alternate materials for pennies due to rising costs in copper. These experiments were known internally as Project Redshift. But Redshift was never publicly acknowledged, and no coins were ever admitted to have been struck under the program. Curtis contacted a friend who worked at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, someone who owed him a favor. A week later, he received a confidential memo, a leaked PDF without any attribution. It detailed an anomaly reported during a 2011 production run in Denver. A single press had been temporarily repurposed to strike prototype coins using experimental planchets. The memo stated that after the test, all materials had been accounted for and destroyed, except clearly, one hadn't been. This information set off a chain reaction that no one could have predicted. Curtis went public with the story, not with the coin itself, but with the claim that he had found what he believed to be the only surviving coin from Project Redshift. He posted it anonymously on a collector's forum, under the username ThionMint. Within hours, the post had gone viral. Collectors, metallurgists, and conspiracy theorists flooded the thread with speculation. Some dismissed it as a hoax. Others believed it could be real, a unicorn coin of the highest order. Curtis kept the coin hidden. Vincent, meanwhile, realized he was now part of something bigger than he could have ever imagined. He agreed to let Curtis handle the inquiries, while he tried to make sense of how a penny he found in a trash heap could suddenly be at the center of a brewing storm. It didn't take long for the offers to start rolling in. The first was from a private collector in Zurich, $2 million, sight unseen. Then came the call from a Tokyo-based investment firm, offering $4 million and an all-expense-paid trip to Japan. Curtis declined them all. He wanted verification. He wanted the truth to be undeniable. The coin was taken, under heavy security, to a private lab in Nevada that specialized in government material analysis. 3 separate tests confirmed that the coin's core contained not just experimental metals but a nanolattice structure used in advanced aerospace applications. It wasn't just a test coin. It was a prototype, incorporating classified materials never intended for public circulation. Word reached the federal level. And that's when the real drama began. Curtis received a cease and desist order from the Department of Treasury. Vincent was visited at his trailer by two men in unmarked suits, asking politely but firmly if he still had the coin. That same night, someone broke into the lab in Nevada and attempted to steal the coin, failing only because it had already been moved. Someone, somewhere, wanted that penny gone. Erased. Forgotten.it was then that Curtis and Vincent decided to make a move. They contacted journalist Marianne Claremont, a Pulitzer-nominated investigative reporter known for taking on cases with deep government entanglements. Marianne had been following Redshift rumors for years. When she was handed the coin and the documentation, she immediately saw the scope of the story. She published an expose in a national magazine, revealing not only the existence of the coin, but its implications. If Project Redshift had succeeded, the US Mint would have transitioned away from traditional metals entirely, creating coins that could be trackable, scannable, and possibly linked to RFID technologies. It was part of a broader vision to digitize and monitor cash movement without public knowledge. The backlash was immediate. Congressional hearings were demanded. The US Mint released a statement denying the coin's authenticity, but the evidence was overwhelming. Experts lined up to verify it. Economists speculated about its implications. Technology firms weighed in on the possibility that the government had been experimenting with integrated circuitry in coinage over a decade ago. Then came the auction. Against the advice of their legal counsel, Curtis and Vincent consigned the coin to the Astral Auction House in London, where it would be displayed under armored glass and sold to the highest bidder. The world watched as security surrounded the venue, drones hovered outside, and networks streamed the event live. Bids opened at $10 million and didn't slow down for 3 straight hours. The final bid, placed by an anonymous buyer through an encrypted satellite call, was $272 million. The room went silent. Then erupted. A penny had just sold for more than most national art treasures. And yet, it made perfect sense. Because it wasn't just a coin. It was evidence. A piece of suppressed history. A reminder that not everything shiny is meant to be seen. The proceeds were split between Vincent and Curtis. Vincent used his share to start a foundation for rural technological education. Curtis returned to private life, disappearing from the spotlight. Marianne wrote a book that became a New York Times bestseller. And the coin? It vanished from public view, allegedly stored in a temperature-controlled vault in Dubai, but the ripples didn't stop. Shortly after the auction, 3 other coins surfaced. All dated 2011. All from Denver. All exhibiting strange materials and unexplained properties. One was embedded in a pendant worn by a retired Navy officer. Another was found in a coin roll purchased at a Florida bank. A third was traded at a flea market for a soda bottle. Each was examined. Each confirmed as authentic. And each brought forth new questions. How many Project Redshift coins were truly made? How many slipped through the cracks? Was it really an accident, or was someone trying to seed them into the world for reasons still unknown? Theories emerged. Some said it was a rogue minting operation designed to test public detection. Others believed it was a deep state program related to black budget aerospace funding. A few even claimed that the coin carried encoded data, like a digital fingerprint of the person who held it. Far-fetched? Maybe. But so was the idea of a trash-found penny selling for $272 million. Today, the legend of the 2011 D1 coin continues to grow. Collectors obsessively hunt 2011 Denver pennies, measuring, weighing, scanning for anomalies. Some even resort to fringe science, running electromagnetic fields over their coins hoping for a spark of truth. And every so often, a new anomaly emerges. A slight discoloration. A weight deviation. A metallurgical anomaly that can't be explained away. The legacy of Project Redshift lives on, not because of government confirmation or public policy, but because of one penny, found in a landfill, that refused to stay buried. A penny that cracked open a hidden history, forced a conversation, and became the most expensive cent ever sold. And it reminds us that sometimes, what seems like the most insignificant object, something most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground, can hold a value that no one could possibly imagine. Thanks for watching. Keep checking your change. Next, 2005D coin. Today, we dig deep into the most unexpected corners of history, discovering the coins that changed lives, started mysteries, and turned pocket change into fortunes. Today's story is unlike any you've heard before. It doesn't begin in a mint or a collector's showcase. It begins with a storm, a tragedy, and a locked safe beneath the floorboards of a crumbling farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. This is the story of the 2005D 1-cent coin that, against every odd and every expectation, turned out to be worth a staggering $213 million. The town of Kessler's Hollow wasn't on any map. Tucked away in the Appalachian foothills of Kentucky, it was the kind of place where generations lived and died without ever leaving the county line. But in the spring of 2016, something happened that would place this forgotten corner of the country at the center of an international treasure hunt. A F3 tornado swept through Kessler's Hollow like the wrath of old gods. It tore down barns, splintered homes, and twisted power lines into steel sculptures. Among the casualties was the Madsen property, a dilapidated house once belonging to Emery Madsen, a reclusive man who died in 2008. Emery had no family, no friends anyone could name, and no funeral. He simply passed away and was buried in the town cemetery without ceremony. The house stood empty for years, a decaying monument to isolation, until the tornado did what time could not, leveled it to its foundation. After the storm, a group of volunteers combed the area, gathering debris and salvaging anything of value. That's when young Hannah Pritchard, just 19 and volunteering with her church group, stepped through the collapsed kitchen and stumbled across something metallic embedded in the floorboards, a heavy, rusted safe. It had been sealed, untouched, and covered by years of dust, mice nests, and fallen timber. They pried it open with crowbars, expecting maybe old family documents or a rifle. Instead, they found coins, thousands of coins, packed in tightly wrapped rolls, with faded bank stamps and handwritten labels. Most were pennies, dating from 1970 to 2006. But one roll stood out. It was labeled in Emery's shaky script, "The Wrong Copper, 2005D." Hannah, curious, took the roll and showed it to her grandfather, Everett Pritchard, who had worked as a coin appraiser in Lexington decades ago. Everett nearly dropped his magnifying glass when he examined one of the pennies. It looked normal at first glance, Lincoln's profile on one side, the familiar Denver Mint mark, the shield design, but the color was off. It had a reddish-orange glow that wasn't quite copper, not quite zinc. He weighed it. The scale showed 3.11 grams, that shouldn't have been possible. In 1982, the U.S. Mint changed the composition of pennies from 95% copper to 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating. The reason was economic. Copper had become too expensive. Since that change, all pennies minted after 1982 weigh 2.5 grams. Any coin from 2005 weighing 3.11 grams would indicate a return to the pre-year 1982 composition. And that wasn't supposed to exist. Everett contacted a friend who worked with the American Numismatic Association. Word spread quickly. Within days, specialists descended on Kessler's Hollow, and the coin was authenticated. It wasn't just an error, it was a ghost. A coin that shouldn't be. A relic of a time long gone, stamped in an era that had no use for it. And it wasn't alone. The entire roll contained 50 such coins. All of them 2005D pennies. All weighing 3.11 grams. All genuine. Theories exploded. Some believed it was an accidental striking using old copper blanks that had somehow found their way back into the minting machines. Others whispered that it was no accident at all, that someone inside the Denver Mint had struck them on purpose, perhaps as part of a secret project or a private stash for future profit. But then someone discovered something even stranger. One of the coins, under microscopic analysis, showed faint engravings along the rim. Barely visible, but unmistakably deliberate, a sequence of numbers that resembled coordinates, latitude and longitude. The coordinates pointed to an abandoned mine 2 counties over. It had been closed since the 1970s, a forgotten shaft with no remaining records. But when a small team of researchers and journalists explored the area, they found what appeared to be a hidden vault carved into the rock, sealed behind a false wall. Inside were 2 crates of copper planchets, unstruck coin blanks, identical in composition to pre-1982 pennies. Each wrapped and labeled with dates from 2004 to 2006. This revelation changed everything. It suggested a conspiracy. Someone, or some group, had been hiding copper blanks long after they were discontinued. Not only hiding them, but selectively using them. And for what purpose? To create the rarest coin runs in modern history? Or to leave a trail? When news of the 2005 D penny broke, coin collectors around the world began searching their own change, their own jars, hoping for a miracle. But none matched the weight, the sheen, the feel. It seemed the Kessler coins were truly unique. A private auction was organized in Zurich, under the highest secrecy. Representatives from 3 museums, 4 billionaires, and 1 government agency attended, all under aliases. The highest bidder, a man rumored to be connected to an offshore banking consortium, offered $213 million for the roll of 50 coins, with the condition that the coins would never be publicly displayed again. The offer was accepted. The town of Kessler's Hollow, barely scraping by before the storm, now found itself flush with cash. The Pritchard family donated the proceeds to rebuilding the community, funding a new school, hospital, and storm shelter named after Emery Madsen, the man who left behind the greatest mystery coin of the 21st century. But this story doesn't end there. A former Denver Mint employee, under the protection of anonymity, came forward shortly after the auction. He confirmed what many had suspected. In 2004, a memo had circulated internally about a proposal to quietly test copper reintroduction. The motive wasn't public pressure or economic benefit, it was symbolic. And not a tradition. But the project was halted, deemed unnecessary and too expensive. However, one supervisor, a man named Lowell Baines, had gone rogue. He had access, time, and motive. It's believed that Lowell struck fewer than 1,000 coins between 2004 and 2006 using the hidden copper planchets. He marked some of them with clues, like the coordinate rim engraving, and distributed them in ways no one could trace. Why? No one knows. Lowell died in 2009, taking his reasons to the grave. But some believe it was a game. A legacy. A modern treasure map disguised as currency. Since then, collectors have reported finding other oddities, 2004 D and 2006 D pennies with slight weight variances, unusual patterns, or microscopic engravings. But none have matched the authenticity or mystique of the Kessler coins. Today, the legend of the 2005 D 1-cent coin lives on, not just as a numismatic anomaly, but as a story of storms and safes, of secrets buried in the earth and encoded in metal. A story of how a penny, the most overlooked coin in circulation, became the most valuable in the world. And it's a reminder to us all that history doesn't just live in books or museums. Sometimes, it jingles in our pockets, waiting to be discovered. Thanks for joining us again. Keep your eyes open, your scales ready, and your curiosity sharp. Because the next time you hold a coin in your hand, you might just be holding a key to a hidden world. See you in the next episode. Last, where the stories you thought were impossible come to life, and today, we uncover one of the most jaw-dropping tales in coin history. It's the kind of story that blends mystery, legacy, science, and a little bit of fate, all wrapped in a tiny copper coin. You might never look at a penny the same way again. Because this isn't just any coin. It's the 1997 1-cent coin that sold for an astonishing $213 million, and the journey it took to get there is unlike anything you've ever heard. The story begins not in a vault or a collector's showcase, but in the dusty back room of a used bookstore in Missoula, Montana. The bookstore was called Lost Pages, run by an eccentric man named Irving LaSalle. Irving had been a professor of history in the 1970s, specializing in American industrialization, but after leaving academia under unclear circumstances, he opened his shop in 1982 and never looked back. Irving had a strange habit. He never threw anything away. Customers who paid with cash had their change meticulously logged in a small journal he kept behind the register. No one ever understood why. He never explained it, and most thought it was just one more quirk of a man who also refused to use computers or electric lighting in his store. But what no one knew, not even his niece who visited every Sunday, was that Irving had an obsession with pennies. He believed that pennies held stories. Not just stories of commerce, but of mistakes, secrets, and human error. And he had thousands of them. He collected pennies the way some people collect butterflies. He examined them under a magnifying glass, weighed them, scratched notes in margins of spiral notebooks, even dated them by when they entered his store. But there was one penny he never spoke about. One penny he kept locked in a steel cigar box hidden behind the paneling of his office wall. This penny came into his life on October 11, 2006. A college student named Marla Trent came into the shop looking for a copy of Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. She paid in cash, and when Irving returned her change, one of the pennies clinked strangely against the glass tray. It was a 1997 penny, dull with age, but it had a feel to it, slightly heavier, oddly smooth. He pocketed it immediately and gave her another that night. Irving examined the penny. It weighed more than any 1997 penny should, 3.14 grams instead of the standard 2.5. It was made almost entirely of copper, not the zinc composition that had been standard since 1982. That shouldn't have been possible. More intriguing was the reverse side. The Lincoln Memorial appeared slightly misaligned, and inside the monument's central column, instead of the usual faint statue of Lincoln, there was what appeared to be a symbol. It looked like an S with a broken line running through it. Irving spent the next 6 years researching that penny. He consulted metallurgists, coin experts, even a retired engraver who once worked for the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia. No one could explain it. And no one had ever seen a mark like that inside the Lincoln Memorial on any other coin, but Irving kept digging. He began studying U.S. Mint records and found something unusual. In early 1997, there had been a temporary suspension of operations at the Denver Mint due to a machinery malfunction. The official report cited a conveyor jam and minor flooding from a burst pipe. But in a footnote buried deep in the report, he found a reference to foreign copper blanks discovered in delivery shipment. That phrase sent chills down his spine. He theorized that someone, maybe even accidentally, had used a batch of copper blanks intended for experimental use, striking them with 1997 dies. But that didn't explain the symbol. That symbol haunted him. Then, in 2012, Irving passed away. His shop closed, and his niece, Clara LaSalle, began clearing out the mountains of books and papers. She stumbled upon the cigar box in the wall paneling purely by accident. Inside was the penny, wrapped in a silk cloth, alongside a letter. In the letter, Irving wrote, "This coin does not belong to me. It belongs to whoever can follow its path. If you're reading this, then you must decide, sell it and be free, or chase the truth and never stop. The coin is a map. But the treasure is not gold. It is understanding." Clara, unsure of what to do, posted pictures of the penny on a coin collectors forum. Within hours, she was flooded with offers, questions, demands. One collector offered $50,000 sight unseen. Another flew from Germany to Missoula, begging to examine the coin. But Clara wasn't interested in money. She wanted answers. She reached out to the Smithsonian, who dispatched a team of experts. The coin was authenticated as a genuine 1997 D Lincoln cent, but one made of 95% copper, struck using a misaligned die, and containing microscopic engraving invisible to the naked eye. When analyzed under high-resolution imaging, the coin revealed a series of coordinates etched into the inner rim, coordinates that led to a decommissioned military research facility in Utah. The facility had been part of a program during the Cold War dedicated to developing non-nuclear electromagnetic weapons, and according to declassified documents, had experimented with encoding data onto various mediums, including coins. The 1997 copper penny, it turned out, had been part of a test to encode classified microdata into publicly circulated items. It had slipped through quality control, struck with regular dies by mistake, and entered general circulation. The S with a broken line was not a symbol at all. It was a compressed marker representing Sector 13 from the Utah facility's archive system. When the penny was subjected to a scanning electron microscope tuned to detect nanostructures, it revealed even more. Embedded within the copper were magnetically responsive filaments, nano-sized inscriptions that, when deciphered, revealed blueprints for a device that had been lost since 1984. The device? A prototype for a solid-state energy converter. The technology had been deemed decades ahead of its time and was shelved due to political pressure and risk of foreign acquisition. This penny was not just rare, it was a data artifact. A relic of science lost, encoded in metal. The US government got involved quickly. But it was too late. Word had spread. International collectors, tech companies, and historical institutes all began bidding for the coin. It became the centerpiece of a legal battle and then an international auction. When the dust settled, an anonymous bidder, rumored to be affiliated with a private think tank in Switzerland, acquired the coin for $213 million. The proceeds were split among Clara, the Smithsonian, which had declined to purchase it but had rights to a share due to their role in analysis, and a trust fund established in Irving's name to fund scientific research. But that isn't the end of the story. Two more pennies have since been discovered. One in Oregon, another in Portugal. Both copper. Both 1997. Both with different symbols in the Lincoln Memorial. Each has led to further discoveries, blueprints, schematics, data packets of projects long believed to be lost or destroyed. Together, they have formed what some now call the Cent Codex, a theoretical collection of 12 pennies, each containing fragments of information tied to secret Cold War tech and experimental science. Whether the remaining coins exist is still unknown. But coin collectors have never been more obsessed. Every 1997 penny is scrutinized. People weigh them, examine them under UV light, even scan them with modified barcode readers. All looking for the next clue, the next fragment. And Clara? She never regretted her decision. She didn't keep a cent of her share. She used the money to build the LaSalle Institute of Curiosity in Missoula, a facility dedicated to research, discovery, and the preservation of knowledge that was nearly lost. And in the lobby, under a sealed glass case, sits a replica of that 1997 copper penny. Below it, a plaque reads, "Sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest secrets." So next time you find a penny on the ground, don't just walk past it. Pick it up. Examine it. You never know what's hiding in plain sight. It might just be history whispering to you through copper and time. Thanks for watching. If you like this story and want to hear more unbelievable yet true coin legends, make sure you stick around. Because who knows? The next treasure might be in your own pocket. See you next time.